Story 1. In every naked mole rat colony, there is one individual whose only job is to get fat enough so that when it rains, he can sit at the nest entrance to prevent the entire colony from drowning. Story 2. Hitler, Leon Trotsky, Joseph Broz Tito, Sigmund Freud, Joseph Stalin, and Archduke Franz Ferdinand all lived at the same time in Vienna, within a 5-mile radius of each other. Story 3. All types of foxes have 42 teeth except for the bat-eared fox, which has 48. As a child, this was the first thing I told people whenever I started talking about foxes. Story 4. There are 39 steps leading up to the National Archives building in Washington, District of Columbia, one for each of the 39 framers who signed the United States Constitution. Story 5. In 1971, Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention were performing at a Montreux casino when an audience member shot off a flare gun and started a fire. The resulting fire destroyed the casino, and the band took a brief touring hiatus. They played a week later in London, where an audience member pushed Zappa off the stage onto the concrete floor of the orchestra pit, putting him out of commission for almost a year. These two events ended the Mothers of Invention and propelled Zappa into a highly successful solo career. The night of the casino fire, a band was staying in a hotel across the lake it sat on. That band had just had their first United Kingdom #1 record and were at the hotel to record their newest album. Watching the casino burn that night inspired them to write a song. The band was Deep Purple, and the song was Smoke on the Water. Story 6. You are allowed to have a bowling ball as a carry-on item on an airplane, but you cannot have the bowling pins. Also, according to the Transportation Security Administration, peanut butter is considered a liquid. There is more paperwork involved in cremating someone than just burying them. Story 7. Dinosaur fossils existed even while dinosaurs were still roaming the earth. For context, fossilization can occur in as little as 10,000 years, and the time gap between Tyrannosaurus rex and Stegosaurus is over 80 million years. That is more than the time gap between Tyrannosaurus rex and humans. Story 8. Trees gain their mass from the carbon content of the air. Very little of their mass comes from the soil, which is logical. There are no tree-sized holes below every tree. This is logical but strange. Story 9. There was a friendly dispute between Canada and Denmark over a small uninhabited rock island called Hans Island because for 17 years, they could not agree on who should own it. Each time Canada or Denmark visited, they would raise their own flag and leave an alcoholic beverage from their country. This continued back and forth until June 14, 2022, when they agreed to divide the island. This also means Canada now shares a border with Denmark. Story 10. Vultures will vomit when they feel threatened. When camels or llamas spit, it is not spit. It is actually rumen contents, mostly stomach bile. Story 11. The clitoris has between 8 to 10,000 nerve endings and is the only organ built entirely for pleasure. Story 12. Dogs have a unique muscle that allows them to show their sclera, the whites of their eyes. Humans recognize other humans by seeing the whites of their eyes. Dogs use this muscle to give us the classic puppy dog eyes, and we all instinctively say, ah. Story 13. To make a mid-1500s broadsword using only the iron found in blood, you would need all of the blood from 217.5 average-sized humans. Story 14. The height of Mount Everest was first recorded at 29,000 feet, but published as 29,002 feet, because the surveyors did not think that people would believe the rounded number. Story 15. Three-dimensional space is unique in that it is the only space in which you can tie a knot. In 2 dimensions, there are not enough degrees of freedom. In 4 dimensions and above, the extra degrees of freedom mean there is always a way to untie a knot without passing it through itself. Story 16. A pigeon will only eat a starburst if you chew it up a little first. Just to clarify, chew the starburst, not the pigeon. Story 17. 100 digits of pi. 3.1415932384626433883795022884197169399375105820974974 9445923078 164062862089 986280348253421 170679. Story 18. Most, if not all, Middle Eastern airlines such as Emirates, Qatar Airways, and Etihad Airways allow passengers to carry one falcon in the passenger cabin. Story 19. The bigger an animal, the slower its heart beats. Here is a table from Google. Elephant, 25 to 35. Horse, 28 to 40. Ox, 36 to 60. Dairy cow, 48 to 84. Human, 60 to 100. Goat, 70 to 80. Sheep, 70 to 80. Pig, 70 to 120. Dog, 70 to 120. Cat, 120 to 140. Rhesus monkey, anesthetized 160 to 330. Rabbit, 180 to 350. Guinea pig, 200 to 300. Chicken, adult 250 to 300. Rat, 250 to 400. Blue whales, 2 to 10 beats per minute when submerged. Story 20. Defibrillators do not restart your heart. They stop it. The heart, if it can, will restart automatically after being shocked. Story 21. Jefferson Davis was President of the Confederate States of America longer than Abraham Lincoln was President of the United States of America. Story 22. I am 48 and started studying engineering in the evenings. One of my teachers is a magnetic resonance imaging technician. He told us that the Beatles made so much money that their record label electric and musical industries did not know what to do with it, so they just invested it in something which led to them funding the development of the first computed tomography scanner, which was called the Electric and Musical Industry Scanner. Story 23. We see a combination of 3 colors: red, yellow, and blue. Shrimp see a combination of 10 to 16 colors, depending on the source. There is so much we do not see. It blows my mind. Story 24. Romeo and Juliet was inspired by the Greek myth of Pyramus and Thisbe, star-crossed lovers who could only meet beneath the mulberry tree. The berries of the tree were originally white, but as the lovers killed themselves under the tree, their blood dyed the berries red, then black. In the language of flowers, the mulberry is said to mean, "You will be the death of me." Also, mulberry trees are crucial in the propagation of silkworms. Story 25. Horse semen can cost millions of dollars per gallon and is one of the most expensive substances on Earth. Story 26. Alaska is the most northern, western, and eastern state in the United States. It is also larger than Texas. Story 27. The northern point of Brazil is closer to every other country in the Americas, including Canada, than it is to the southern point of Brazil. Story 28. The blue whale's anus is 39 inches in diameter, making it the second largest after people who use speakerphones in public. Story 29. The longest word that can be typed using only the top row of keys on a QWERTY keyboard is the word typewriter. Story 30. Thanks to a friend of mine who started a reindeer farm, I've learned that reindeer do not care for carrots at all because they don't have the right teeth for chewing them. But you know what they really go crazy for? Raisins. Get yourself a handful of raisins and they will swarm you. Instead of leaving a few carrots out for Santa's reindeer, just leave a box of raisins instead. You might be put on the nice list early for next year. Story 31. The first Soviet spacecraft were just intercontinental ballistic missiles with the warheads removed and replaced with a cockpit. The cosmonaut inside had no control of the spacecraft because the Soviet government was so paranoid that a cosmonaut might try defecting to the West that they made it remote-controlled. Story 32. Me eating mint chocolate chip ice cream with my dad and sister at an ice cream place on vacation. You know who else really liked mint chocolate ice cream? Timothy McVeigh had it as his last meal. Sister. What the heck? Story 33. The term redhead, referring to people with ginger hair, has existed longer than the name for the color orange. This is why they are not called orange heads. Story 34. Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants, is the male lead in the Smashing Pumpkins music video for Tonight Tonight. Story 35. The number of ways you can shuffle a 52-card deck is 8 times 10 to the power of 67. A number so large it is difficult to comprehend. 80 octillion. Story 36. Poland is the 4th roundest country in the world and also the 5th most square country. Or the other way around, I don't quite remember. Story 37. In the video for Take On Me by a-ha, the main villain chasing Morton Harket is played by Philip Jackson, best known as Inspector Japp in Agatha Christie's Poirot. Story 38. I do not know if this counts as random since it was literally my job in the military, but folded American flags are shaped like a triangle. A perfectly folded flag has a 1, 3, 5-star pattern visible, while a 2, 4-star pattern visible is the standard. Anything other than those patterns either means it was not folded correctly or the flag is not regulation. Story 39. My go-to random fact is that part of our brains does not know the difference between falling asleep and dying. Have you ever had a random muscle spasm right before falling asleep? That is your brain checking to see if you are still alive. Story 40. Polarization works because of the orientation of photons. Roughly half of them are oriented upward while the other half is oriented downward. Any photons that are oriented 180 degrees from the polarization are blocked, and the rest are allowed through. This is how polarized lenses reduce light intensity without simply being darker. Only half the photons get through. It is also why they let you more easily see through reflective surfaces. Story 41. The longest escalator in the Western Hemisphere is in a Washington metro station in Maryland. 3 escalators in St. Petersburg tie for the longest continuous escalator in the world. Story 42. Just learned this from a Jetpunk quiz. Spoiler for those who play there. The 10 closest states by distance to Moscow, Russia, are, unsurprisingly, Alaska, followed by the New England states, plus New York and Pennsylvania, and then, surprisingly, Michigan. This is probably because Michigan has the shortest route over the North Pole. Story 43. We have structures on our retinas that allow us to perceive polarized light. It is called Haydinger's brush. Story 44. Random numbers from a computer are rarely truly random but come from an algorithm which, properly seeded, can generate the same random sequence repeatedly. Some systems have a source of true randomness, such as a temperature sensor or a video feed of the real world, sometimes involving lava lamps. Just because there are 2 doors does not mean the chances of one or the other having the goat are 50-50. Similarly, just because there are n possible outcomes does not necessarily mean that the chances of any given outcome are 1 divided by n. Story 45. Looking for the Titanic was just a side quest and cover story. They were really looking for 2 Russian nuclear submarines. Story 46. If someone is staring at you in close proximity and you feel uncomfortable or awkward, you can look at the bridge of their nose. This will make their brain register that it feels like you are looking at both of their eyes instead of one, which will make them uncomfortable. Story 47. George Stephen Morrison, the United States Navy captain who commanded local American forces during the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which led to the escalation of United States involvement in the Vietnam War, was the father of Jim Morrison, the lead singer of The Doors. Story 48. The last person who knew the Rongo-Rongo language had already been indoctrinated into Christianity and was convinced the language was demonic. To get him to translate the tablets, the researcher chose to fill him with alcohol. The intoxicated translator sang and danced while reading the tablets, implying the language may also be a form of dance notation. Additionally, the language contains several icons that resemble people posing or dancing. Story 49. The United States Navy sailors' love of ice cream in World War II was so great that in 1943 the Navy purchased an ice cream barge to act as a mobile ice cream making factory for sailors and Marines. The barge was capable of producing 10 gallons of ice cream every 7 minutes. Story 50. The 1955 Chevrolet used in the 1971 movie Two-Lane Blacktop with James Taylor and Beach Boy Dennis Wilson was painted black. It also appeared in the 1973 movie American Graffiti and was driven by Harrison Ford. The car featured in an episode of Adam 12. When Smokey and the Bandit was made in 1977, the engine sounds dubbed for the Trans Am were from the same 1955 Chevrolet. Although both James Taylor and Dennis Wilson were musicians, neither had a song on the Two-Lane Blacktop soundtrack. Story 51. Salt and Peppa only took off because of roller skating rinks. They were the only ones who would let them perform. Queen Latifah also started at a roller rink. She got her name from a roller rink DJ. The rink added Queen to their advertisement about her, and she embraced it. Similar stories exist for Naughty by Nature, Dr. Dre, and Ice Cube. Roller rinks really seem to help elevate 1990s hip-hop culture. Please support your local roller skating rink. I also suggest everyone watch the documentary United Skates. It showcases how roller skating has been so influential in our culture and discusses how the roller skating community has been declining and how much it means to people. It is probably a more emotional documentary than you would expect for something about roller skating, but it is great. Story 52. Maine is the closest United States state to the African continent. Greenland is north, east, south, and west of Iceland. Most of the United States landmass is west of South America. Story 53. I know how to perform trepanation on my injured big toe to release trapped blood and relieve extreme pain. Story 54. When riding horseback in the Amazon rainforest, avoid the tree line because jaguars hide in the trees and see you and the horse's food. Story 55. H.G. Wells' The Time Machine and War of the Worlds are set in the same universe. There is another book called The Sleeper Wakes, which is considered a prequel to The Time Machine. In it, one of the characters casually mentions the Martian invasion. H.G. Wells also wrote a Warhammer-style game called Little Wars, a game for boys from 12 years of age to 150 and for that more intelligent sort of girl who likes boys' games and books, but it is commonly shortened to Little Wars. Story 56. The last living grandchild of the 10th President of the United States, John Tyler, died late last month. John Tyler was president from 1841 to 1844 after William Henry Harrison died of pneumonia. Story 57. Pneumonultramicroscopic silicovolcaniconiosis is the longest word in the English dictionary. It is a type of disease caused by inhaling a specific type of dust. Godzilla became an official citizen and tourist ambassador of Japan in 2015. In 1986, due to violent arguments and behavior, Rob Halford's boyfriend committed suicide in front of him. This event, along with other factors, led Rob Halford to enter rehabilitation. Story 58. Mark Hamill once visited Den Helder, the Netherlands, to promote The Empire Strikes Back on Dutch television. This makes no sense. The big television studios were all in Hilversum back then. However, the most popular Dutch television show in 1980, Telebingo, hosted by the late great Mies Bouwman, toured the country as a gimmick. Each week, it was a live broadcast from a theater in a different town. The circus happened to be in Den Helder when Luke Skywalker paid a visit. Story 59. During the filming of The Passion of the Christ, Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus, dislocated his shoulder and was struck by lightning. He had to have open-heart surgery 2 separate times for damage caused by the lightning to his heart. He will play Jesus again in Resurrection and should be safe this time since he is dead. Not trying to insult anyone, just stating the obvious. Story 60. The first man-made object will soon be a light day away from Earth. Voyager 1, launched in 1977, will soon be an entire light day away from Earth. November 2027 is when we expect the stellar achievement to occur, 50 years from its launch. This may not be surprising to those who find space travel fascinating, and even less so for those who understand the distances involved, but it is both amazing and mind-bending. Story 61. You know those silicone seals on liquid medicine bottles? The ones the doctor can stick the needle straight through to draw medicine before giving you an injection? The person who invented that seal tragically murdered his entire family with an axe. Story 62. 7 is the most common random number chosen between 1 and 10. 37 is the most common number chosen between 1 and 100. Story 63. I've got 2 particularly random facts. The European goldfinch is commonly depicted in Renaissance paintings. In the video game Terraria, it takes exactly 270 chlorophyte ore to craft a full armor set. In older versions, it took 324. Story 64. Chickens instinctively peck at anything that is red. That is why if one starts bleeding, the others will peck it to death. Also, some mites cause them to develop red rashes, which the others peck at, thus spreading the mites. Story 65. Martin Van Buren was the first United States president born in the United States of America. He is the first and only United States president whose first language was not English. Story 66. I am not a Michael Jackson fan. However, he was born on my sister's birthday, and he died on my birthday. So if I am ever at a bar trivia and those random facts come up, I am solid. Story 67. SCUBA stands for self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, while TUBA stands for terrible underwater breathing apparatus. Story 68. Squids have donut-shaped brains, and the esophagus runs through the middle. They can cause brain damage by taking bites that are too large. Story 69. To easily convert Celsius to Fahrenheit, double the Celsius value and add 30. I was told this when I was very young, and while it may sometimes be off by a degree or two, for the most part it is accurate. Story 70. The word gringo originates from the Mexican-American War in the 1800s. Mexican soldiers reportedly shouted "Green, go home" at American soldiers because the United States Army uniform was green. Over time, the phrase evolved into the word used today. Story 71. Dragonflies are the ultimate predators. They have not evolved much in the past millennia because there is nothing else to improve. Story 72. The number of possible games in Go is estimated to be 10 to the 170th power. The number of atoms in the observable universe is estimated to be 10 to the 80th power. Bananas are berries. Raspberries and strawberries are not, because berries have their seeds on the inside. The Great Wall of China is not visible from space without a telescope. Story 73. A Cenobite is not a movie monster. It is a term for monks who live communally. They are literally monks of the flesh. Story 74. If you know someone who has had a kidney transplant, they most likely have 3 kidneys inside of them. Unless the kidney whose functionality is being replaced with a donor kidney is causing severe issues, it is left where it is. Story 75. The Outerbridge Crossing, located at the far end of Staten Island and connecting New York to New Jersey, is not named because it is the Outer Bridge. It is named after Eugenius Outerbridge, the first chairman of the New York and New Jersey Port Authority. Story 76. The napkin ring problem. If a napkin ring with the diameter of a baseball and a napkin ring as wide as the sun have the same height, they will have the same volume. Story 77. Danny Jansen once came to the plate to bat in a Major League Baseball game. In the middle of the at-bat, he was traded to the opposing team and finished that same at-bat as the catcher. For those wondering how, the game was suspended in the middle of the at-bat and resumed several weeks later. Story 78. Ants have been observed performing surgery on each other, meticulously amputating a limb while other ants hold it down to preserve the patient's life. Story 79. Cantonese slang for masturbation translates to shooting down airplanes. Also, the word for but translates to fart drum. Story 80. Magenta is not a real color, but how your brain interprets a mixture of the non-overlapping visible spectrum colors of red and blue. There is no such thing as magenta. Story 81. The song people in Sweden always sing in salute of the frog, SMA Grodorna ar lustiga attse, was originally a French march in salute of onions. Story 82. An acre of corn can release 3,000 to 4,000 gallons of water into the atmosphere per day. That is why states with heavy agriculture feel extremely hot and humid in the summer. Story 83. Physical constraints of the paper stop you from folding it more than 7 times. This fact is a mathematical continuation but still impressive. Story 84. Between the first powered flight in an airplane by the Wright brothers and the first man on the moon was only 66 years. A person could have seen both major firsts. Story 85. The principle of distraction, where one pain supersedes another, was first noted in the Middle Ages. Soldiers shot with an arrow noted their headache went away. Story 86. The Stegosaurus lived much earlier than the Tyrannosaurus rex. which lived much earlier than humans. Humans lived as cavemen for over 99% of human history. Story 87. Soy sauce, or shoyu as it is called in Japanese, came to Europe before the bean. When the bean arrived later, we called it soybean, even though it is called daizu in Japanese. Soybean roughly means bean sauce bean. Story 88. If we converted and condensed all the atoms of information on the internet into a solid form, it would be about the size of a large strawberry. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.